In this video, we're going to review all of the different brush types for the Sketch-A-Stitch program. And so we've got the workspace open, we have a hoop on our screen, and to unlock, or I guess uncover the sketchbook tool, we need to turn on the tool right here in the toolbar. And notice when I click on a tool, it becomes highlighted in orange. Orange means it's turned on, and you can tell that the slow redraw tool is turned on and the sketchbook tool is turned on. And when you change to using the select tool will be orange and the sketchbook tool will no longer be orange. And so you'll always know which mode you're in by what's highlighted in orange, or at least what's turned on, like your hoop and your 3D mode and your stitches are turned on. So let's go ahead and click on the little sketchbook tool, which unlocks or uncovers our little blue widget, and go through all of the different brush selectors. So this is the tool here where you can click on brush and it'll show you all of the different types of brushes, and just playing with them, clicking and dragging to try each one pretty much helps you understand them. But let me go through how they work. So first of all, the first four up top here are a steel stitch, a pressure sensitive steel stitch, a calligraphy, and a tapered end. All of them make like a border, a column, a satin, a zigzag stitch that will go back and forth. And so I chose tapered ends, and now I click and drag to draw that line. And you'll notice, I'll just zoom in closely over it, that that line has a small taper to the end of it, where it gets from thicker into a point, such as that. And that's why it's called tapered ends. And so again, you turn on your brush selector, your widget, you click on here and you choose your style of embroidery and click and drag to draw to create it. If you click here, you can change the width of the line. And so this is 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, or 4, 5. These are widths, and you can even add your own. I will show you in a video that we do about the preferences, how you can customize and change these. But these are quick links to different widths of, a line. So there's a thicker one, and then there's a thinner one. As you can see, you can quickly change that, as well as you can quickly change the density. And so with the density, we're talking about the distance between the rows of stitches, and how the further apart they are, the less the number of stitches in your design, and the less of coverage. And then you can see how it affects it. And so again, I'll show you in the preferences video how you can customize all of these and decide exactly which numbers are there. But it comes pre-programmed with a nice range of from kind of an open density to a solid and a complete density like that. And so that's how it works. So as you browse through, the next one is called calligraphy. And the only real difference here is it does one side thick and one side thin. And so you have a thin part and a thick part to your drawing. And so it's great for, like handwriting and stuff like that, because it takes on almost like the look of a calligraphy pen. The next one is called pressure sensitive. Now, this is not something that will work when you're simply using a computer mouse. This is the one tool in the toolbox that kind of requires you to have something more than a basic mouse and computer. I'll talk more about what I'm referring to now later, but in general terms, you can use other styles of a mouse. So imagine that you have a touchscreen computer, and instead of using your mouse on the keyboard, you can take your finger and click on your screen to choose, and click and drag to draw with your finger or a pen on a screen. Or maybe you have a drawing tablet, like a drawing pad that sits on your desk. It's like a different kind of mouse. Well, the software also works with that. And so what I'm telling you is pressure sensitive doesn't work with my mouse. It doesn't seem to matter how hard I click or push that mouse button. It never gets thicker or thinner. But if you had, let's say, a nice touchscreen laptop that included the ability to interpret pressure sensitivity, in other words, how hard you push with your pencil, then the line gets thicker the harder you press, and the line gets thinner the less you press. And so that tool may or may not be effective for you right now. If I just select it and then use my mouse, it simply makes a steel stitch, just like the next tool does. It simply makes a steel stitch. Oops, what did I choose there? Steel stitch, yeah. And so you click and drag to draw a steel stitch. So when you do a steel stitch, just notice that the steel stitch simply is like the other calligraphy, just not thick and thin. And it's like the tapered ends, just without a tapered end. It's a basic steel stitch. So that's the concept. And all of those steel stitches are great for doing sort of nice, bold satin stitch columns. So what else have we got? Turn on the brush, turn on the tool, click on the brush selector, and now you have applique. And applique, if I click on a new workspace just to show you an applique by itself, and then I click and drag to make the applique design. Or if you want, you can choose the basic shapes and it will make you an applique in that basic shape. But I want to point out that the two things that we've created on this screen both have, if you expand the sequence view, they tell you that they're an applique. And if you expand that, it shows you that there's actually 1, 2, 3 colors involved in this applique. So let's get it just have one of them. So I'll select the select the green shape and delete it. And just leave the yellow star applique. And notice up at the top, if I simulate sewing, that it starts out with a run stitch. You would place fabric. Now it sews the run stitch again. You would trim around that fabric, and it finishes off with some sort of a satin stitch cover. And so this is how the applique tool works. And we'll do a video to go through all of the different nuances of an applique, because there's quite a bit of control that you can take over the applique that you've created. But just know, when you turn on your brush selector and you draw or create shapes with applique, that the software creates all of the necessary steps for you to be able to sew that as an applique. Now we've got the fill tool, and with the fill tool, when you click and drag, it will fill your shape in with with thread. So solid embroidery, and you can change your color down at the bottom. So if you would rather make red hearts, you can make red hearts from the color palette at the bottom. So whatever color you click on becomes the color you're now working in, and so now we're making blue hearts. Unless you'd like to make diamonds or stars, in which case now you're making blue stars. And if you want to go back to drawing again, you choose the pen. And now you're drawing filled in shapes with your pen. And it automatically closes from the shape. In other words, when I draw, let's say, a shape that starts here, and it can go wherever you want, but it's going to be a shape that includes a line that goes from wherever I finish. So I haven't let go yet. There, I'll stop right there. It's going to draw a line from where I finished over to where I started. And it becomes a closed container. Does that make sense? Now, if you crisscross your lines, the software doesn't totally get confused. It just makes a shape that has fill in 2 different spots. But the idea is that you would draw the boundary of your shape to fill it in. So that's how the fill tool works. And now you've got the run line tools. One of them is a bean stitch run line. The other one is a single ply run line. When you choose on bean stitch run line, you click and drag to draw the bean stitch. You won't see that it's a bean stitch unless you watch it and slow redraw very carefully, but it goes forward and then back and then forward again. So it's forward, back, forward, forward, back, forward, and every stitch gets done 3 times, aka a bean stitch. Okay, so let's turn on the sketchbook tool selector one more time and look at the last one, which is the single run. And again, you simply click and drag to draw that run stitch. And when you're done, it's a single ply run stitch that simply goes forward, forward, forward. And so these are all of the different styles of brushes which we can choose. And depending on which brush that you select, so for example, when you select the run stitch, now I'm not sure my icon's missing there because there's also the stitch length selector or the pen versus the shape selector. And like I said, if you change this to be, oh, let's say a calligraphy, then these become a density and a width selection. Does that make sense? And so if I go back to fill, then my options are the type of pen selection and the density selection. And so this toolbar will update itself based upon the brush that you select.